branch is now code freeze, and we have a release candidate available. So if you're not in a release 130 channel and you want to give it a try, all details in a Slack channel, and we're planning release on May 14th. So yeah, but basically right now it's only fixes and bug fixes going to 130. Just wanted to let everyone know. Thank you.
That's great news, Peter. Hey, thanks for all your work on that. It's great to see this release running so smoothly.
Thanks.
All right. Next up, we have Ricardo about Gateway API metrics.
Hey, yeah, thanks. So just let me turn my camera on, sorry. So this is something that appeared back on time when I was doing some researches on, opportunities to improve some security things and some implementations. And I found that Gateway API, the proxy that it's created by for Gateway API implementation, it doesn't has any sort of authentication on the endpoint metrics. So basically, anyone going to the slash metrics that can go to the slash metrics of the proxy inside the cluster, right, will be able to scrape all of the virtual hosts and clusters and other things that may exist on the proxy. There is actually no easy fix for that. Usually on Kubernetes, what we see, it's like controller runtime backend operators. They do have the token review implementation where you can say just like, yeah, you're gonna authenticate, use token review and service account bindings. And before controller runtime things, they supported that. You could use kubeback proxy or something like that to protect the metrics. So the goal is mostly to understand first what is the desire to fix this, to limit the access to the proxy metrics to some sort of Prometheus sending some authentication or something like that. And if so, I did added some some HTTP filter-ish or some sort of proposal that would make Envoy do JWT authentication, which I don't think it's great, but I'm not sure if it's something that we want to do. So I just wanted to bring this back to discussion.
Thanks, Ricardo. John?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of different options on how you can do it, and all of them are possible today. So I'm not sure that we need to do anything in the project itself. Like if you want to add network policy, that's great, you can do that. If you want to add authentication, you can use existing Istio APIs like request authentication and make your own route that routes to the metrics and exposes it with your own authentication. Or it could be MTLS as well, right? So overall, I mean, documentation on these things, absolutely, like that's great. But I'm not sure that we need like native support for different authentication methods when we already have a gateway, that knows how to authenticate and route traffic.
I actually wasn't aware we could do request authentication on that. That sounds interesting and like maybe worth some documentation or a blog.
Yeah, I had no idea. So I'm adding that to the issue actually John mentioned in you that you said that we could do request authentication on that, and I can take the action to understand a bit more what is the the idea of creating this inner route and making the auth in front of that. Eventually, we will need to when we create this request authentication, we will need to disable this other route that allows anyone to scrape the metrics, right?
Possibly, yeah. I mean, you could do network auth or whatever network policy, but that's maybe not the best way. Yeah. There might already be some flags around that. I'm not sure. I'd have to double check. Or around, I mean, not disabling it, but making it served over localhost instead of externally. You need exposed over localhost to route to it.
Yeah, sounds good. I'm adding that to the comments then, and I will just double check if I missed something later. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Ricardo. And I think, Ricardo, we have you up for the next agenda item, which is the current state of pilot filter gateway cluster config.
Yeah. I think. Thanks, Mitch. Yeah, sorry. So I think this one actually, John, you commented on the issue after I did add it to the agenda, and I kind of forgot to remove. But I'm happy to actually to get some current state if you think we should be sharing that again, and if I can help on that. So basically, internally when we were discussing about doing some turnings on. There was some case of someone doing 10,000 services or something like that, or someone trying something like that, and someone mentioned that flag, and I was like, okay, first, like this seems to be something like that. It's 6 years old, so is this like still experimental or not? And do we have some process where we say like, yeah, this is like this things that were enabled by default for some long time, they can be moved out of the experimental, and then specifically about this one, this flag. How we can move with that, and Keith, I'm not sure if someone is explaining to you about that on the chat.
Yeah, I sent it.
Yeah, but John did that. Yeah, thank you. So that's my two questions on this this item on the agenda.
Yeah, I mean, basically, it's an unsolved problem for 4 years or whatever, and not because it's not a good problem to solve, but because no one has a good solution for it. There are a number of users that accept the risks of this and do it. But as so far, the stance has been that we don't want to make the default that your traffic will fail, even if that means we have lesser performance. Now, some other projects don't make the same trade-off, which is why they failed my test that I sent there. But
cool. So this unsolved problem. Well, if it's 4 years old, it's not something that it's easy to fix for sure. But I will try to take a look or see if someone, I know that Jacek from our team internally, he was taking a look into that as well. So I will see if there is something that we can do other than, at least if this is something that we can enable on our side with the caveats of the risks, or at least identify when those problems, the risky behavior can happen. I would probably be happy on our side to have that documented as well and say like, yeah, go for it, you can enable, but you have this risk when specifically this situation happens.
yeah, the specific risk, by the way, if it wasn't clear, is that when you switch basically the set of like clusters that are referenced, the thing that like you basically like the simple case is like you switch a route from pointing to service A to service B. Now we start sending to service B, but the cluster for service B isn't there yet, so you get 500 errors. So if you're doing like any type of like route changes, you run into issues. Now if you have just everything static config and you're just serving the same traffic, no rollouts, anything, that's fine. That's when people do this flag and they have no issues there. But when you do changes, that's the risk.
Does this need some Envoy changes? Like, should the route swap not like an option to not cut traffic over to the cluster exists?
There's an Envoy issue where this is discussed, and the Envoy community, if I recall, this is years old memory, but I recall they said like, no, your control plane's wrong, and then I felt that I provided convincing argument on why this is impossible to solve in the control plane, and then I think they said, oh, we're going to solve this, and then nothing's happened in multiple years. So there was something about like cache, like a XDS cache in Envoy or something that they were adding or looking into adding, but I haven't heard anything about that in years.
Cool, thanks.
Thank you.
All right. I think our next agenda item comes from Gustavo around the multi-cluster GA release.
Thank you, Mitch. Yeah, so we basically released in February, right, 129, and we were able to make multi-cluster, multi-network or ambient, we made that into beta state, right? And we have interest now in pushing that to a GA state, right? And we want to check with the community and the maintainers, what are the expectations there? If there's any caveats or any questions that people want to raise as we do the move. And Mikhail, you can complement as well. My question here, if you want.
Maybe a bit of context. There are some issues that we want to fix before going GA that we know of. We are looking for some feedback, additional guidance of what to check before we declare it GA, and what issues we should check out and potentially fix.
Gustavo, Mike, are you familiar with the requirements that we have for GA or lifecycle requirements?
I'm familiar with that they exist. I didn't look at the details.
Okay.
Just wanted to start the discussion.
Yep. So you can find both of those things under the Istio community repo. There's two markdowns, feature lifecycle and feature lifecycle checklist, that will be relevant here. Mostly the checklist, I think. The stable checklist is relatively small compared to beta. We have to make sure that we have tests in place to prevent any regressions. So those known issues that you're working to fix, we want to make sure we have regression testing in place. We want to rerun our performance documentation. I think it's been a minute since we've done that. So on the multi-cluster, so we can rerun those tests and then just no major known issues. Those are the documented requirements. Do any other community members have any concerns about moving to GA at the 131 release?
Maybe let me ask a specific question. There was, when we had a beta discussion, questions about customer feedback. Are we looking for any new customer feedback or anything of the sort that we kind of have to go and proactively solicit or find the customers who would be willing to provide it? Is there anything of this sort that you would be looking for?
All right, I'll go ahead and note that in the minutes or the agenda or whatever. And then, Gustavo, did you have more to say on that topic, or should we move on to Stephen?
No, that's it, Mitch. That's it, Mitch. Thank you.
Okay. Stephen, you want to talk to us about R2 buckets?
Yeah, so as everybody is, Keith mostly sick and tired of hearing this. I'm migrating stuff to R2. Almost everything is in R2, and the CI is working. The only things that aren't there are the performance metrics, because I didn't know they existed until yesterday, and release branch stuff, which I'm not planning on touching. I'm just curious if people have any feelings about if we should migrate everything from our Google Cloud buckets, like all our prowl logs and history, to the new R2 buckets. I think we definitely want to do that with our releases. I think probably for our master builds, and I'm not really sure about our prowl logs and whatnot.
Prowl logs are useful for the last month.
Yeah.
To see how a test has been behaving, get an idea if it's flaky, that sort of thing. But beyond that, I don't know when the last time we purged prowl logs are. I don't see a lot of value beyond a month.
Okay, cool. So if people don't have strong thoughts, I think I'll move over all the build artifacts, all the release artifacts, and maybe the last few months worth of Pro.
That would be awesome. Thanks, Stephen.
I guess I'm next to, there are two PRs I was hoping people could take a look at. One of them is a bug that I probably introduced with listener sets. And then, actually, why isn't that one merging? I don't see, it might need maintainer / pilot, networking / pilot.
Yeah, I'm not logged in, so I can't see that.
Okay. And
I'm
then,
not going to log in on a live video.
yeah. And then the other one was something that we've been working on since September. Yawn, I think, isn't really contributing to the. Actually, I'm not sure what his status is with Istio, but I figured I'd just. He was working on it, and it was silent for a while, so I took it over. So yeah.
You're just looking for reviews on these?
Yeah, they're just pretty far into the PR queue, so. Yeah. And actually, does anybody have any comments on these? I have one more quick thing.
I can take a look at the unmanaged gateways one,
Okay.
and probably the cross merging one too.
Okay, cool. Thank you. The other thing is I'm planning. Oh, back to the R2 stuff. Since we're changing things, I figured we should do, or I should do, a practice security release. Just so when there is an actual security release, we're not caught unprepared. I was talking to a product security working group this morning. One thing that they mentioned was that Google runs their own tests on releases. I'm just curious if anybody has any more insight onto that, or I should just ask the Google people directly.
I would love to change that process. As a release manager, it was basically like you ping somebody on Slack who works at Google and you're like, can you kick off the long running tests? And then hopefully they'll acknowledge it within 24 hours and they'll get back to you in a day or two and be like, yep, it looks good.
So the reason Google runs these is because they take a long time, and so we're going to be too expensive on our other test resources, like not eligible for PROW, etc.
That is my best guess. It may also just be historical reasons, so that's where they have the info set up. But I don't have a great understanding of what the tests do or what the value they provide is. It feels less than ideal to have it opaque like that.
The tests live in the Istio. I want to say the Istio tools repo. It spins up a bunch of pods. It's a silk test. You spin up a bunch of pods, add some automated churn, check Prometheus metrics for abnormalities, and then you spin them down. I think last time we talked about this, and I think John was a part of those conversations as well. There's actually questions around if these long-running tests actually provide us meaningful signal, because they were created at a time where the control plane didn't scale new as well as it does now. And so every patch release might be too frequent. If you know, to the extent that it provides us any value. I think it might be worth asking, like, rather than just trying to move these tests over, find a new home, or change the process, it's worth asking what value are we getting from them, and should we continue using them at all?
Okay, so it sounds like we've got some outstanding questions. First, we need to make sure we understand what tests these are. Then we need to determine value. And then we need to either deprecate or migrate. right?
Yeah, I'm curious for the TOC or steering. I never know the difference. Forget the difference. Is that part of our release process like set? As in, like, that's just a part of the release process that we have to follow? I'm just curious.
It
When you
is.
say set, like,
It
is
is. Okay. But it's written somewhere that we have to run the long running test. Okay, cool. So I honestly think, Mitch, the hard part of this is not, it's just getting somebody to take ownership of it. But I think Jackie and I can work on it.
Okay. Let us know if you need any help moving that forward, Stephen.
Yeah. Thank you.
I'll just add briefly just my vote as one of the 6 TOC. Again, emphasis on the one. It's my personal perspective. It's written in the process. We should follow the process as it's written. But I'm also not opposed to changing the process. If it's just going to be toil and ad hoc sort of things for little value, I mean, that just seems like a luxury that we can't necessarily afford in an open source project. And so I think it's worth it. If someone's willing to, wanting to bring it up to TOC to ask for TOC to evaluate, then I think that would be a good use of time. Because that's time that our maintainers can be spent on other things.
Yeah, 100% on following the process. Cool.
All right. Well, I see that we have Conrad with us. Conrad, did you want to take us through your CRL design doc?
Yeah, sure. All right. So last working group meeting, we discussed sort of the temperature in the room around CRL enforcement, expanding this to new outbound connections. So initially, the previous work landed on only new inbound connections. So this meant that no CRL enforcement was happening on outbound connections, new outbound connections, as well as existing inbound or outbound connections. I've tailored this design doc specifically to the new outbound connections scenario, since it's the lowest hanging fruit here. Should be pretty non-contested in terms of the UX. The design doc, I'm trying to focus on the actual UX of the CRL enforcement itself. Within this, I've listed the relevant lore there for the initial implementation and design doc. And the design doc there really focused more around the actual ingestion of the CRL file itself and how it's propagated elsewhere for zTunnel and Envoy to pick up and use. For the actual requirements section, the use cases that I could really think about from a zTunnel outbound connection perspective are sort of 3 scenarios here: when zTunnel is connecting to another zTunnel instance, a waypoint, or an east-west gateway, which is zTunnel in the gateway mode. So in those 3 scenarios, we would likely want CRL enforcement for an ambient mesh setup, as this creates the sort of full security boundary of CRL enforcement, so that if any leaf certificate or intermediate signing authority has been revoked and your CRL is updated, this would be enforced on actual outbound connections from zTunnel. If you want to scroll down some, yeah. So in design ideas, this section is really more about the UX of how we want it to actually behave instead of actual code changes. So when thinking about this further, what I've really landed on for open questions are the CRL expiry policy, whether CRL enforcement on outbound connections should be opt-in versus always on, and then observability around when CRL is actually enforced or fails to enforce. So for the expiry policy, looking at other implementations, like I think it was OpenVPN, the industry patterns really to reject all connections if your CRL has expired. But from our implementation on the new inbound connection side, we actually use the default behavior of the Rust Web PKI crate, which is a fail open pattern. And I think that's much more reasonable in terms of when thinking about, outages that could happen if your CRL expires and whatnot. We don't necessarily want to close down the outbound connection path just because our CRL has expired. So just want to see what the temperature in the room is on that question. Fail open would likely want this to reflect how new outbound connections are enforced.
Is this,
Yeah,
sorry. Is this
No.
behavior not specified by the CA?
That's a good question. I'm not sure, actually.
Okay, I can look it up right now.
Yeah, so while Steven's looking that up, I can continue and then we can circle back to that question. So for the other open question, opt-in versus always on, it's around how serial enforcement, whether we want it to be sort of an always on feature, if a customer is providing a CRL to Istio D and Z tunnel, should this just always be enforced, or should there be also another sort of flag to opt into the actual outbound connection piece? I don't think I have necessarily an opinion on this. I think, in terms of simplicity, always on is definitely more simplistic than having an opt-in, but I also can't necessarily think of any customer scenario where they would want to have opt-in. I guess in my thought process, the opt-in is literally providing the CRL itself, but we do have two paths of enforcement here for inbound and outbound. So that is a open question to resolve here. And then on the observability side, it's pretty straightforward. I think access logs actually will already be there in terms of when a cert is revoked in the CRL, enforces that on an outbound connection and inbound. The access logs will reflect that with the specific web PKI error around the certificate being revoked as a reason for the connection failure. But in terms of actual metrics, I think it would be likely useful for customers to have visibility into whether it's a revocation rejection counter or something else to be determined there. But that's pretty much the gist of it. For the actual CRO enforcement side, this would happen at the actual TLS handshake before, if it's a double H-bone connection, it would happen before the inner H-bone is created and whatnot, so that no data over the wire is actually sent. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Any thoughts or questions, feedback, anything?
I have a dumb question. CRLs expire? I was not familiar with that.
Yeah, to my knowledge, they can have a expiry date on them.
Yeah,
Okay,
there's
so
like
then
an
if you've got like a list of
equivalent
of revoked certificates, you have to refresh it at some interval. Otherwise, we'll begin allowing those certificates.
Sounded like Ian had maybe a specific comment around this.
Yeah, I was just trying to say there is like a field in the CRL that's not before and not after equivalent. I don't remember what they're called. They're called something different, but it is there.
Interesting. Are those mandatory fields?
I don't know the answer to that, but I think like especially in the case of web PKI, they're kind of ignored by default. So
Okay.
Yeah, just a quick Google search shows that this update and next update field. So this update field would be the publication time of the CRL. Next update would be expiration time, and they are mandatory.
Huh.
So the next update is essentially stating when the newer CRL should be published by the CA itself.
But you can make it like the expiry of the CA itself. So it's
Yeah, exactly.
Sure.
And to my knowledge, they are pretty long-lived types of files.
That's
So I
all the
mentioned
questions I have on
yeah.
this. Anyone else have? Oh, sorry, Ian, I talked over you.
I was gonna apologize for talking over you. You can go first.
I was just going to ask if anyone else had questions.
All right, I'll just note that for your question 1, I think we should keep the existing behavior for now and maybe add a strict mode later if there's like a desire for it. But implementing outbound connection, honoring CRL doesn't, to my mind, explicitly require us to change the existing behavior of honoring those expiry fields.
It could be a flag, like if users want it to be, they want to opt into
Yeah, I would say
adhering.
nothing for now and flag in the future if there's desire or ask for it. But I could go either way.
That seems reasonable to me.
for number 2, I feel like I'm just having trouble coming up with a situation where you explicitly configure a CRL, or you explicitly put a CRL in your ztunnel, but you don't want to enforce it.
I mean, it could be the person who added, or like the people managing the CRL is different than the application owners or orchestrators, and maybe they're testing and don't want to. I don't know. I could see some scenario where it's not the same group, but I could also see that leading to some vulnerabilities. But I can just imagine maybe it's different groups.
Yeah, I guess in my mind, I'm trying to figure out why. Well, does it make sense to just treat CRLs like we would certificates? Like, I understand a fail open aspect and default behavior, but I guess I'm just trying to understand how they're different. Like, if they exist, why would we not utilize those fields and things like that? You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure if I'm understanding your question exactly, but I would sort of lean towards, if the CRL exists and outbound enforcement is implemented, we should probably honor it. It's such a new feature anyway. I doubt anyone has had time to develop a hard dependency on only inbound enforcing these things. Now that I've said it, it'll probably come true, but it seems a little bit unlikely to me.
I would agree with that. Like, if they configure it,
outbound.
It should be used.
Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would actually expect that most people using this behavior would expect outbound to always also be enforced.
Agreed.
Right, it's probably a shot that it's not enforced. They'd probably be upset if I realized it wasn't.
I think there are a lot of other things that we should do, not putting this on Conrad or anybody specifically, but like, for example, there's like a PR open that was like something along the lines of, if a ztunnel detects that one of its own certificates is in the CRL, it should log it. I think it should get a new one. But
So I did review that. That's not actually what PR does.
Okay, well, that's what
I
it
think
was hoping to do.
A little bit misleading, but yeah.
Yeah, but I definitely welcome this change because it seems like a good idea and what most users would expect, anyways.
Yeah, Conrad, you and I can sync on that one that Stephen just brought up, because there is some matching logic in there that might be useful for outbound, and maybe consolidating those and making sure it's extra correct would be a good idea.
Yeah, so specifically for the zTunnel cert itself, not whatever workload cert zTunnel would be presenting, is the caveat.
That's what the PR claims to do, but it applies to every cert that we handle, just in a weird way.
Yeah. Yeah, I noticed it was on the actual, this logic wasn't in the actual CRL manager, which is likely where it should lie.
Yep.
Yeah, we can sync up later on that. Cool. So the consensus on the opt-in versus always on seems like folks are leaning towards the always on scenario. Like if you're presenting a CRL, then why would you not want enforcement on outbound? Seems like a sort of weird caveat there. Cool. Any thoughts on observability? Any like specific sort of thoughts there and on types of metrics that we should introduce here, or do we think a counter for revocation rejection seems pretty simplistic, useful enough? I'll take that.
I think you should be good to go here.
Yeah, cool. Sounds good.
Thanks for bringing this.
Absolutely. Thanks for the discussion.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, we've hit the end of the agenda. Anyone else have anything to add?
One last question on the design doc. Is there any formal process for, stating it as approved, or is this meeting sort of outcome good enough?
I would consider this good enough. We technically have a formal approval process that we've not followed in some time.
Okay.
Not to mention, this isn't really an API change.
Yeah, exactly. Cool. I'll mark it as approved then.
Thanks, Conrad.
Thank you.
All right. Well, that was a full agenda, and we're still finishing 15 minutes early. So that's very cool. Thanks, everybody, for attending, and we'll catch you next week.
Cheers.
Yeah.
Thanks, folks.